Anna stands in her bedroom, David's bedroom, as Ken crosses the threshold for the first time. The wedding ring lies in its velvet box. Across town, Rachel watches their joined hands in the church basement, her calculated smile hiding dangerous intentions. In the parking lot, their first kiss tastes like coffee, and grief transformed into hunger that could destroy them both. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. The support group met every Thursday evening in the basement of St. Catherine's Church, fluorescent lights humming overhead, while 12 people sat in a circle of folding chairs, united by the single worst thing that had ever happened to them: loss. Anna Whitmore arrived exactly 5 minutes early, as she had for the past 8 months, her blonde hair pulled into the same practical ponytail she'd worn since the funeral, her wedding ring still present on her left hand despite her daughter's weekly suggestions that maybe it was time. At 34, she looked simultaneously younger and older than her years, the kind of contradiction that grief created in a woman's face. She took her usual seat between Margaret, a 72-year-old widow who'd lost her husband of 50 years, and an empty chair that had remained vacant for the past 3 sessions. The group had shrunk since January, people moving on or moving away from their pain in whatever direction felt survivable. Anna understood both impulses, the desperate need to escape and the equally desperate need to stay exactly where the wound was freshest, as if leaving it might mean forgetting him entirely. Across the circle, Rachel Montgomery sat with the rigid posture of someone barely holding themselves together. At 22, she was the youngest member of the group by over a decade, her mother's death 6 months ago having shattered the careful architecture of her recently launched adult life. She had her mother's sharp cheekbones and questioning eyes, but where her mother had softened with age and experience, Rachel remained all edges and unprocessed anger. She attended sporadically, her presence dictated by whatever internal crisis had made isolation unbearable that particular week. Tonight, Rachel's leg bounced with anxious energy, her fingers picking at the hem of her oversized sweater. Anna noticed because she'd learned to notice everything in the months since David's sudden heart attack had transformed her from wife to widow, in the space between one breath and the next. Noticing kept her occupied, gave her something to do besides exist in the vast emptiness of a house that still smelled like his cologne in the master closet. The group facilitator, Dr. Patricia Chen, was reviewing the evening's theme when the basement door opened. Ken Ashford descended the stairs with the careful awareness of someone entering unfamiliar territory, his presence immediately shifting the energy in the room. He was 36, tall and broad-shouldered, in a way that suggested either athletics or manual labor, his dark skin contrasting sharply with the church basement's institutional beige walls. He wore jeans and a simple gray Henley, work boots that had seen genuine work, and an expression of profound reluctance mixed with desperate determination. Anna felt something she hadn't experienced in 8 months, a flicker of awareness that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with being a woman noticing a man. The realization horrified her. David had been gone less than a year, his side of the bed still untouched, except when she collapsed there in the middle of sleepless nights, breathing in the fading scent of him on his pillow. She had no right to notice anyone, especially not here, especially not now. Ken's eyes scanned the circle with the practiced assessment of someone accustomed to evaluating environments quickly. When his gaze met Anna's, something passed between them, a recognition that had nothing to do with prior acquaintance, and everything to do with seeing your own devastation reflected in another person's eyes. He looked away first, choosing the empty seat beside her with what appeared to be deliberate randomness. "I'm Ken," he said when Dr. Chen prompted introductions, his voice carrying the kind of controlled steadiness that came from years of not revealing too much. "My wife died 14 months ago. Car accident. We have a daughter, Mia. She's 7. He paused, his jaw working as if the next words required physical effort. I thought I was handling it, but Mia's teacher suggested I might benefit from talking to other people who understand. The group murmured acknowledgments, that particular sound of communal recognition that happened when someone's pain echoed your own. Anna found herself wanting to reach out, to touch his arm in comfort, but kept her hands folded in her lap, her wedding ring pressing against her skin like a reminder. Rachel, Anna noticed, had stopped bouncing her leg. The younger woman stared at Ken with an intensity that made Anna uncomfortable, though she couldn't articulate why. There was something almost predatory in Rachel's focus, a hunger that seemed disproportionate to the moment. As the meeting progressed, Ken spoke little, listening with the complete attention of someone gathering intelligence. Anna shared briefly about David, about the impossibility of explaining to friends that grief didn't follow a timeline, that 8 months felt simultaneously like yesterday and a lifetime ago. Her voice remained steady until she mentioned finding his reading glasses beside the bed last week, exactly where he'd left them the night before he died, and then something in her throat closed and she couldn't continue. Ken's hand moved slightly toward her, an aborted gesture of comfort that he pulled back before making contact. But the intention had been there, and Anna felt it as clearly as if he'd actually touched her. After the meeting, people lingered in small clusters, exchanging the particular intimacy that shared suffering created. Anna typically left immediately, unwilling to extend her vulnerability beyond the mandated hour. But tonight she found herself moving slowly, gathering her purse with unnecessary care. "Mrs. Whitmore?" Ken's voice came from behind her, respectful and uncertain. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to intrude, but when you mentioned the reading glasses, I understood that completely. I found one of Claire's hair ties in the bathroom drawer last month, and I sat on the floor and cried for an hour." Anna turned to face him, and up close she could see the exhaustion written in every line of his face, the particular weariness that came from being a single parent while simultaneously trying to survive your own grief. "It's the small things," she said softly. "Everyone expects you to struggle with the big moments, anniversaries, and holidays. But it's the reading glasses and hair ties that destroy you." "Exactly." Ken's expression shifted into something that might have been relief at being understood. "How do you manage it? The being present for your child while feeling like you're drowning?" "I don't know that I do manage it," Anna admitted. "David and I didn't have children. It's just me, which is both easier and harder. I can fall apart whenever I want, but there's no one who needs me to keep breathing." Something complex crossed Ken's face. "I'm sorry, I assumed—" "Everyone does. 34-year-old widow. They expect children?" Anna surprised herself with the honesty. "We were trying. 3 years of fertility treatments, and then his heart just stopped. And now I'm grateful we failed, because at least I don't have to see his face every day in a child who'll never know him." The words came out harsher than she'd intended, revealing depths of bitterness she usually kept carefully contained. But Ken didn't flinch, didn't offer platitudes or reassurances. He simply nodded, accepting her pain as valid rather than something to be fixed. "That's the first time I've said that out loud," Anna continued, unable to stop now that she'd started. "Everyone wants me to be sad about not having his baby, and I am. But I'm also relieved, and that makes me feel like a monster." "You're not a monster," Ken said quietly. "You're surviving however you can. There's no right way to do this." Rachel appeared beside them with the sudden presence of someone who'd been hovering nearby, waiting for an opportunity. "Ken, right?" Her smile was bright, too bright for a grief support group. "I'm Rachel. I just wanted to say how brave you are coming here. Single dads don't always reach out for help." Anna saw Ken's polite smile, the automatic response of someone accustomed to deflecting attention. "Just doing what I need to do for my daughter." "That's exactly what I mean," Rachel pressed, moving slightly closer into his personal space. "Your daughter's lucky to—" Have a father who prioritizes her emotional well-being. She paused, her voice dropping into something that might have been intended as intimate. If you ever need someone to talk to, someone who understands, I'd be happy to get coffee sometime. Outside of here, I mean. The offer hung in the air, blatant in its intention despite the grief support group setting. Anna felt a flash of something uncomfortably close to jealousy, which was absurd on multiple levels. She had no claim to this man she'd met 30 minutes ago, no right to feel territorial or possessive. And yet, watching Rachel's calculated approach felt wrong in a way Anna couldn't articulate. Ken's expression remained carefully neutral. I appreciate that, Rachel, but between work and Mia, I don't have much time for socializing. That's kind of the problem, actually. Rachel's smile tightened fractionally. Of course I understand, but the offer stands. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone closer to your own experience. Her eyes flicked briefly to Anna, the implication clear. You're young, and I'm young, not like the others here. After Rachel departed with a lingering touch on Ken's arm, he turned back to Anna with an expression of mild alarm. Did I miss something, or was that completely inappropriate given the setting? Anna finished. Yes, but grief makes people do strange things. She's young, and she's hurting, and she probably doesn't even realize how that came across. Ken studied Anna's face with an intensity that made her suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how the basement had largely emptied while they'd been talking. You're generous in your interpretation? I'm realistic, Anna corrected. I've watched people in this group for 8 months. Everyone's trying to fill the void however they can. Some people throw themselves into work, some into religion, some into new relationships before they're ready. She hesitated, then added, and some of us just exist in the space between who we were and who we're becoming. Not sure we'll ever fully arrive anywhere. That's exactly it, Ken said, something like wonder in his voice. The in-between. I'm not who I was when Claire was alive, but I'm not ready to be whoever comes next. I'm just suspended, going through the motions for Mia's sake. They stood in the fluorescent glare of the church basement, two strangers connected by the worst thing that had ever happened to them, and Anna felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. The acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, survival might occasionally require witnesses who understood without needing explanation. Same time next week? Ken asked, and Anna heard the question beneath the question. Will you be here? Can I count on seeing you again? Is it okay that I want to? Same time next week, she confirmed, and when their eyes met, the basement felt warmer somehow, less institutional, almost safe. Anna drove home to the house she and David had bought 3 years ago, the one they'd planned to fill with children who would never exist. She parked in the driveway, sat in the darkness, and for the first time in 8 months, she didn't cry. Instead, she thought about Ken's hands, about the way he'd almost reached for her before pulling back, about the fact that noticing him hadn't felt like betrayal, but like the first breath after being underwater too long. Inside, she made tea she wouldn't drink, and stood in the kitchen David had renovated himself, his handiwork visible in every custom cabinet and carefully selected tile. His presence saturated every corner of this house, and Anna had spent 8 months treating it like a shrine, preserving everything exactly as he'd left it. But tonight, looking at his coffee mug still sitting beside the sink, she felt something other than the crushing weight of loss. She felt the faintest whisper of possibility, the terrifying recognition that life existed beyond grief, that wanting to live again wasn't the same as forgetting the dead. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, this is Ken from the support group. Dr. Chen gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Just wanted to say thank you for tonight, for understanding about the hair tie. Most people think I'm crazy for keeping it. Anna stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every widow's guide she'd read, every well-meaning friend, had warned about rebound relationships, about the danger of seeking comfort in the arms of someone equally broken. She should delete the message, maintain appropriate boundaries, protect herself from complications. Instead, she typed, "I kept his reading glasses in my purse for 3 months. I'd reach for them during meetings just to have something of his to hold. You're not crazy. We're just doing our best." The response came quickly. "His reading glasses, your purse. God, that's exactly it. Thank you for making me feel less alone in this." They texted until 2 in the morning, the conversation meandering through shared experiences of grief, the particular challenges of navigating holidays and anniversaries, the guilt that came with moments of genuine laughter or joy. Anna told him about finding David's grocery list and buying everything on it, even though she lived alone now. Ken told her about playing Claire's favorite songs on repeat until Mia begged him to stop because it made her too sad. Neither mentioned the obvious, that they were both starving for connection, that isolation had become suffocating, that grief support groups were supposed to provide community, but often just highlighted how profoundly alone each person remained. Neither acknowledged that texting a stranger at 2 in the morning was exactly the kind of behavior people warned against, the desperate reaching that came from being touch-starved and emotionally depleted. Anna fell asleep with her phone in her hand, Ken's last message still on the iOne screen. "Same time next week feels too far away. Is that weird to say?" She'd typed, "Yes, but I feel it too," before sleep claimed her, the message unsent, the truth hovering between acknowledgement and denial. The following Thursday took forever to arrive. Anna found herself planning her outfit with care that horrified her, selecting a blue sweater that brought out her eyes rather than the shapeless black she'd been wearing for months. She dried her hair instead of pulling it into a ponytail, applied minimal makeup with hands that shook slightly from nerves or guilt or anticipation. She arrived at the church basement early, as always, but this time the weight felt charged with possibility rather than obligation. When Ken descended the stairs, his eyes found her immediately, and the smile that crossed his face was like sunlight breaking through clouds. He took the seat beside her without hesitation this time, his presence solid and warm in a way that made Anna acutely aware of the 18 inches of space between their chairs. They didn't speak before the meeting started, but the silence felt comfortable, companionable, like they'd already said everything that needed saying in the late-night texts that had continued throughout the week. Rachel arrived late, her entrance marked by the click of heels on linoleum that seemed deliberately attention-seeking. She'd dressed differently tonight too, Anna noticed, her usual oversized sweaters replaced by a fitted dress that emphasized her youth and figure. She made a point of greeting Ken warmly, touching his shoulder as she passed to take a seat directly across from him. Throughout the meeting, Anna felt the weight of Rachel's gaze, the younger woman's attention splitting between Ken and Anna with an intensity that felt increasingly uncomfortable. When Dr. Chen asked for volunteers to share, Rachel spoke about feeling isolated, about how young widows faced unique challenges that older members of the group couldn't understand. "No offense to anyone here," Rachel said, her eyes landing briefly on Anna. "But when you're 22 and everyone your age is just starting their lives, being widowed feels especially alienating. People my age can't relate, and people older than me treat me like a child who couldn't possibly understand real loss." The comment landed with obvious intention, creating a division in the room that hadn't existed before. Anna felt heat rise in her cheeks, recognizing the territorial marking for what it was, Rachel establishing herself as Ken's peer in a way that excluded Anna by virtue of age alone. Ken shifted in his seat, his discomfort visible. "I think grief is grief," he said carefully. "Age doesn't diminish or amplify loss. We've all lost the person we built our lives around. That shared experience matters more than how many birthdays we've had." It was a diplomatic response, refusing to engage with Rachel's attempt to create alliance through age similarity. But Rachel, seemed to miss or deliberately ignore the gentle rejection, smiling at Ken as if he'd agreed with her. After the meeting, Rachel positioned herself near the stairs, effectively creating a barrier Ken would have to navigate to leave. Anna gathered her things slowly, uncertain whether to stay or go, whether maintaining distance was kindness or cowardice. "Mrs. Whitmore," Dr. Chen approached with her therapist smile, kind but professionally boundaried. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Anna's stomach dropped, wondering if somehow her attraction to Ken had been visible, if grief support groups had rules about fraternization she'd violated. But Dr. Chen led her to the corner with gentle hands and gentler words. "I wanted to check in about how you're doing with the group dynamics," Dr. Chen said carefully. "I've noticed some shifting patterns lately, and I want to make sure everyone feels safe and supported." "I'm fine," Anna replied automatically, then paused. "Actually, I'm not sure what I am. Is it wrong to feel like I'm competing with a 22-year-old for the attention of a man I barely know? Because that's what it feels like, and it makes me feel like I'm betraying David's memory while simultaneously being pathetic." Dr. Chen's expression softened with understanding. The grief support group can sometimes become complicated when members start seeking connection beyond shared loss. It's natural to be attracted to someone who understands your pain. It's also natural for that attraction to trigger guilt and confusion. My only caution is to be mindful of your motivations and to proceed with awareness rather than desperation. "Is that what this is?" Anna asked quietly. "Desperation?" "Only you can answer that," Dr. Chen replied. "But I'd suggest asking yourself if you're drawn to Ken specifically, or if you're drawn to the idea of not being alone anymore. There's a difference, and it matters." The question haunted Anna as she finally headed toward the stairs, where Rachel had engaged Ken in animated conversation about something that required multiple hand gestures and conspiratorial laughter. As Anna approached, Rachel's demeanor shifted subtly, her body language becoming more possessive, her hand finding Ken's forearm as she made a point. "Anna," Ken said, relief evident in his voice as he spotted her. "I was hoping to catch you before you left." Rachel's smile tightened. "Oh, are you two friends? That's sweet. It must be nice for you to have someone older to talk to, Ken, like a mentor in navigating grief." The comment was calculated poison, positioning Anna as maternal figure rather than potential romantic interest. Anna felt the sting but kept her expression neutral. "Actually," Ken said, his voice taking on an edge Anna hadn't heard before, "Anna and I have been texting throughout the week. We've developed what I'd call a genuine friendship based on shared experience and mutual understanding. Age has nothing to do with it." Rachel's face flushed. "Oh, I didn't realize you two were... I just thought..." She stumbled over the words, her careful positioning suddenly revealed as transparent as it was. "You thought wrong," Ken said simply. Then to Anna, "Walk you to your car?" They left Rachel standing in the church basement, her carefully constructed approach demolished by Ken's decisive choice. Outside, the evening air carried the first hints of autumn, cool enough to make Anna aware of Ken walking close beside her, his body heat a tangible presence. "I'm sorry about that," Ken said once they reached Anna's car. "She's been texting me all week. I haven't responded, but she keeps trying, and I didn't want to be harsh because she's clearly struggling. But that comment about you being older, like a mentor, that crossed a line." "She's 22 and hurting," Anna said, though the defense felt hollow. "She's looking for connection in all the wrong places." "So am I," Ken admitted, stopping beside her driver's door. "But I'd like to think I'm looking in the right place. Am I? Is this crazy, Anna? We barely know each other. We're both grieving. Every piece of conventional wisdom says this is a terrible idea." Anna's heart hammered against her ribs. "It's probably a terrible idea." "Probably," Ken agreed. But I haven't felt this alive in 14 months. Just talking to you, texting you, knowing I'd see you tonight, it gave me something to look forward to besides just surviving for Mia's sake. I dried my hair tonight, Anna confessed. For the first time since David died, I cared what I looked like. I chose this sweater because it's his favorite color, which made me feel guilty, but I wore it anyway because I wanted you to notice me. Ken's hand lifted, hovering near her face the same way he'd almost touched her shoulder the week before. This time, Anna leaned into the almost contact, closing the distance until his palm cupped her cheek with devastating gentleness. "I notice everything about you," he said, his voice rough. "The way you twist your wedding ring when you're anxious. How you hold your breath when someone shares something that hits too close to home. The fact that you haven't cried once in these meetings, even though I can see you holding it in. I notice all of it, and it makes me want to know everything else." Anna's eyes closed at the touch, her first physical contact with another man since David's death. It should have felt wrong, should have triggered guilt or shame or horror. Instead, it felt like the first warm thing in a winter that had lasted 8 months too long. "What are we doing?" she whispered. "I don't know," Ken admitted. "But I know I don't want to stop." They stood in the church parking lot, his hand on her face, her wedding ring still present, both of them suspended between grief and whatever came next, and Anna felt the ice around her heart begin to crack. "Coffee," she said suddenly. "Tomorrow, somewhere that's not a church basement. Somewhere we can just talk without grief being the only thing we have in common." Ken's smile transformed his face. "Tomorrow, there's a place near my work, opens at 7. Is that too early?" "I haven't slept past 5 in 8 months," Anna replied. 7 is practically sleeping in." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, a touch so tender it made her chest ache. "Tomorrow," he repeated. Then, with visible reluctance, he stepped back, his hand falling away. "Drive safe, Anna." She watched him walk to his truck, a battered Ford that looked like it had seen years of hard use, and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Want? Need? The terrifying recognition that grief and desire could coexist, that the heart's capacity for feeling didn't end with death, but expanded in ways both beautiful and devastating. At home, Anna stood in front of the bathroom mirror and slowly, deliberately, removed her wedding ring for the first time in 9 years. Her finger bore the pale indentation of its presence, a ghost reminder of promises made and kept until death had intervened. She placed the ring in its velvet box, not throwing it away, but acknowledging that wearing it while pursuing Ken would be dishonest to everyone involved. David's face smiled at her from the photo on the dresser, frozen in time at 32, younger than she was now. "I don't know if you'd forgive me for this," she whispered to the image. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself. But I'm so tired of being alone, and he makes me feel like maybe I deserve to be more than just your widow." Her phone buzzed. "Ken." "I know it's late, but I had to tell you. Mia asked me tonight why I was smiling more. I told her I made a new friend. She said, 'That's good, Daddy. You need more than just me.' So apparently, I have my 7-year-old's permission to pursue this thing we're not naming yet." Anna smiled through sudden tears, the complicated mixture of grief and hope that had become her constant companion. She typed back, "I took off my wedding ring tonight. First time since the funeral. My hand feels naked and wrong, but also lighter. Is that terrible?" The response came immediately. "Nothing about this is terrible. Terrifying, maybe. Complicated, definitely. But not terrible. See you at 7. Anna climbed into bed, David's side still untouched, and let herself imagine for the first time what it might feel like to share this space with someone new. The guilt came, sharp and immediate, but underneath it lived something else, something that felt almost like permission to keep living. The coffee shop Ken had chosen was aggressively normal, the kind of place that served adequate coffee to construction workers and early morning commuters without pretension. Anna arrived at 6:55, her heart racing with the kind of nervousness she hadn't felt since first dates in her early 20s, when the stakes had been so much lower and the future had seemed infinite. Ken was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees positioned like sentries. He stood when she entered, and the smile that crossed his face made the guilt recede fractionally. He looked different outside the grief support group context, less haunted somehow, or maybe just allowed to be more than his loss. "I didn't know how you took your coffee," he admitted as she sat. "So I got 1 regular and 1 with cream and sugar. You can have whichever you prefer." "Regular is perfect," Anna said, reaching for the black coffee. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and the contact felt like electricity, the kind of awareness that her body had forgotten was possible. They talked for 2 hours, the conversation moving beyond grief into the territories of actual lives. Ken worked construction, managing crews for a company that renovated historical buildings. He'd grown up in Chicago, moved to Richmond for Claire's teaching position, stayed after her death because starting over somewhere new seemed impossible when he could barely manage the known. He loved his daughter with a fierceness that colored every story he told, his whole face transforming when he talked about her latest obsession with dinosaurs. Anna shared her own history, the graphic design work she'd abandoned after David's death because creativity felt impossible when everything inside her was gray. She talked about David's passion for woodworking, about the unfinished rocking chair in their garage that he'd been making for the baby they never had. She confessed that some days the only thing that got her out of bed was spite, the stubborn refusal to let his death mean her life ended too. "That's not spite," Ken said gently. "That's survival. There's a difference." "Is there?" Anna asked. "Because most days it feels like I'm just going through motions, performing the role of functional human being while actually being hollow inside." Ken reached across the table, his hand covering hers with the same careful tenderness he'd shown in the parking lot. "You're not hollow. You're wounded and healing simultaneously, which is maybe the most difficult thing a person can do. But Anna, I see you. Not the performance, not the facade. I see the real person underneath, and she's remarkable." Anna's throat closed with emotion. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Ken insisted. "I know you text me at 2 a.m. when the loneliness gets unbearable because you trust me not to judge. I know you cry in your car before going into the grocery store because couples shopping together remind you of everything you lost. I know you still sleep on your side of the bed because taking his space feels like erasing him. I know you, Anna, maybe better than people who've known you for years, because grief strips away everything except truth." She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his, and felt the fissure in her heart widen into something that might eventually become whole again. "This is too fast," she whispered. "Probably," Ken agreed. "But I spent 14 months moving slowly, carefully, making sure every step was measured and safe. It didn't make the pain less. It just made the time longer. Maybe fast is what we both need to crash into something that feels alive instead of carefully preserving death." They left the coffee shop as the morning rush began, stepping out into sunlight that felt warmer than it had any right to be in early October. Ken walked her to her car again, and this time when his hand cupped her face, Anna leaned into the touch without hesitation. "I want to kiss you," Ken said, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "But I also want to do this right, to not rush past important moments because we're both starving for connection." "What if rushing is okay?" Anna asked. "What if grief means we don't have time to waste pretending we're not desperate for this?" Ken's other hand found her waist, pulling her closer until their bodies aligned in ways that made Anna forget how to breathe. "Then maybe we acknowledge that we're both desperate and decide it doesn't make this less real." The kiss, when it finally happened, felt like coming home and running away simultaneously. Ken's mouth was warm and certain, his hands gentle but possessive on her waist and face. Anna's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, trying to eliminate every millimeter of space between them. She tasted coffee and something darker, the flavor of grief transformed into hunger. And when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she felt more alive than she had in 8 months. "Oh, God," Anna gasped. "I just made out with you in a parking lot, like a teenager." Ken laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. "I haven't kissed anyone except Claire in 15 years. I forgot what it felt like, how consuming it could be." "It's been 9 years for me," Anna admitted. "David was my only adult relationship. This is all new territory." They stood pressed together between parked cars, the morning commuters flowing around them like water around stones, and Anna felt the world tilt into new configuration. This was happening, whatever this was, and the guilt she'd expected felt smaller than the overwhelming relief of not being alone anymore. "I need to pick up Mia from school at 3, Ken said, still holding Anna close. "But tonight, after she's asleep, can I call you? Can we keep talking like we have been?" "Yes," Anna said simply. Then, with more courage than she knew she possessed, "Or you could come over, after she's asleep. We could talk in person instead of over the phone." Ken's eyes darkened with understanding of what she was offering. "Anna, are you sure? Because once I'm in your house, in your space, this becomes something we can't take back." "I don't want to take it back," she replied. "I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of protecting myself from feeling anything except loss. I want this, Ken. I want you. Whatever that means, however complicated it gets." The kiss he gave her then was different, deeper, flavored with promise and possession that made her knees weak. When they finally separated, both were flushed and breathing hard, the parking lot suddenly feeling far too public for what they both wanted. "Tonight," Ken promised, "I'll text you when I'm on my way." Anna drove home in a daze, her lips still tingling from kisses that had awakened parts of herself she'd thought died with David. She spent the day in a fog of anticipation and anxiety, cleaning the house with manic energy, changing the sheets on the bed she hadn't shared in 8 months, standing in front of her closet, trying to decide what one wore when inviting a man over for what was clearly going to be more than conversation. The text came at 9:30. "Mia's asleep. I'm leaving now. Last chance to change your mind." Anna responded immediately. "Don't change your mind. Please." She answered the door in jeans and a simple sweater, nothing seductive or calculated, just herself as honestly as she could present. Ken stood on her doorstep, wearing the same work clothes from earlier, his hair slightly damp from a recent shower, his eyes dark with want and uncertainty in equal measure. "Hi," Anna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," Ken replied. Neither moved for a long moment, the threshold between them feeling significant in ways that had nothing to do with physical space and everything to do with the choice they were both making. Then Anna stepped back, an invitation, and Ken crossed into her home, into her life, into the space David's death had hollowed out. The door closed behind them, and suddenly they were kissing again. Desperate and hungry, hands pulling at clothes and hair and anything they could reach. They barely made it to the couch before Ken pulled back, breathing hard, his hands framing Anna's face with devastating tenderness. "Wait," he gasped. "We need to slow down. I want you so badly I can barely think, but I also want to do this right. To make sure you're sure." Anna's chest heaved as she looked up at Ken, seeing her own desperation reflected in his eyes. "I'm sure," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've been sure since that first night in the parking lot. Maybe even before that, when you almost touched my shoulder in the church basement." Ken's thumb traced her jaw, the touch sending electricity down her spine. I need you to understand something. This isn't just physical for me. It can't be. I'm not built that way, and even if I were, you deserve more than someone using you to forget their pain." "Then what is this?" Anna asked, her hand sliding under his shirt, feeling the warmth of his skin, the solid reality of him. "This is me choosing to live again," Ken said simply. "This is me deciding that loving Claire and wanting you aren't mutually exclusive. This is me being selfish enough to take what you're offering because the alternative is dying slowly while pretending to be alive." Anna kissed him then, pouring 8 months of loneliness and longing into the contact. They moved together through her house, a path marked by discarded clothes and desperate touches, until they reached the bedroom where David's presence still lingered in every carefully preserved detail. Ken paused at the threshold, understanding the significance without needing explanation. "We don't have to do this here," he said gently. "We could go somewhere else, somewhere without history." But Anna shook her head, pulling him forward. "No, this is my life, my space. If we're going to do this, it has to be real. And real means not running from the past, but choosing the present anyway." What happened next was tender and desperate in equal measure, two people learning each other's bodies while simultaneously trying to forget and remember others who'd occupied this space in their hearts. Ken touched her like she was something precious and breakable, his hands mapping territory that had belonged exclusively to David for 9 years. Anna surrendered to sensation, to the relief of being wanted again, of mattering to someone in ways that transcended grief. Afterward, they lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like Anna's lavender detergent rather than David's cologne, and the absence felt both liberating and devastating. Ken held her close, his heartbeat steady against her ear, and Anna felt tears slip down her cheeks without permission. "It's okay," Ken murmured, his hand stroking her hair. "You can cry. You can feel whatever you need to feel. I'm not going anywhere." "I just cheated on my dead husband," Anna whispered, the guilt crashing over her like a wave. "In our bed. In the bed where we were supposed to grow old together." "You didn't cheat," Ken said firmly. "You survived. You chose to keep living even though part of you died with him. That's not betrayal, Anna. That's courage." "Does it feel like courage when you think about Claire?" Anna asked, turning to face him. "Or does it feel like you're erasing her?" Ken was quiet for a long moment, his hand continuing its soothing motion through her hair. "It feels like both. Like I'm honoring everything she gave me by being willing to accept something new. Like I'm betraying her by wanting someone who isn't her. The contradiction lives in my chest constantly, and I'm learning that maybe that's just what healing looks like, holding two opposite truths simultaneously." They talked until nearly 2 a.m, their conversation wandering through territories of guilt and desire, memory and hope. Ken told her about the first time Mia had seen him smile after Claire's death, how his daughter had cried with relief because she thought she'd lost both parents. Anna confessed that she'd been contemplating selling the house, running away to somewhere David had never been so she could finally breathe without his ghost in every corner. "Don't sell it," Ken said suddenly. "Not yet. Not until you're sure you're running towards something instead of away from pain. I made that mistake after Claire died, threw away half her things in a grief-fueled purge that I regret every day. Mia deserved to keep more of her mother's belongings, but I was so desperate to stop hurting that I eliminated everything that reminded me of what I'd lost." "How do you know when you're ready?" Anna asked. "When does keeping things become unhealthy preservation instead of healthy remembering?" "I don't know," Ken admitted, "but I think it's different for everyone. For me, I knew I'd turned a corner when I could look at Claire's photos and smile instead of just crying, when remembering her felt warm instead of only painful." "I'm not there yet," Anna said quietly. "Looking at David's picture still destroys me. Sometimes I avoid entire rooms of this house because they're too saturated with memories of him." Ken pulled her closer, his warmth a comfort against the chill of grief that never fully receded. "Then we take it day by day. Some days you'll be okay, some days you won't. I'm not expecting you to be healed or whole. I'm just asking for you to let me walk beside you while we both figure this out." The following Thursday's support group carried a tension that everyone could feel, but few could name. Anna arrived to find Rachel already there, positioned strategically near the door where she could intercept Ken. The younger woman's expression when she spotted Anna was pure calculation, assessing and measuring in ways that had nothing to do with shared grief. "Anna," Rachel said with false brightness, "I didn't expect to see you here. I thought maybe you'd found what you were looking for and moved on." The barb landed with obvious intention, suggesting that Anna's presence in the grief support group was somehow fraudulent now that she'd found connection with Ken. Anna felt her face heat with embarrassment and anger in equal measure. "Grief doesn't have an expiration date," Anna replied carefully. "And finding support in one area doesn't negate the need for community in another." "Of course not," Rachel agreed, her smile sharp. "Though I do wonder if some people are using this group for purposes other than processing loss. It must be convenient, having access to vulnerable people who are desperate for connection." Before Anna could respond, Ken descended the stairs, his presence immediately drawing attention. His eyes found Anna first, softening with warmth that made her breath catch, before shifting to Rachel with polite distance. "Rachel?" he acknowledged with a brief nod, then moved past her to take the seat beside Anna without hesitation. His hand found hers under the shield of their chairs, fingers lacing together in a private declaration that felt more significant than any public announcement. Rachel's expression cycled through hurt, anger, and something darker before settling into forced composure. She took her usual seat across the circle, her gaze fixed on their joined hands with an intensity that made Anna uncomfortable. Dr. Chen began the meeting with her usual opening about creating safe space for shared vulnerability. But tonight, the atmosphere felt anything but safe. Rachel's presence carried hostile energy that contaminated the careful equilibrium the group had established. When it came time for sharing, Rachel spoke first, her voice carrying calculated emotion. "I've been thinking a lot about how grief changes us, how loss makes us do things we wouldn't normally do, how desperation can be mistaken for connection." Her eyes locked on Anna and Ken. "I've watched people in this group seeking comfort in all the wrong places, confusing physical attraction with emotional healing. It's concerning, honestly. We're all vulnerable here, and some people take advantage of that vulnerability." The accusation hung in the air, thinly veiled but unmistakable. Several group members shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to address the obvious subtext or pretend not to notice. Ken's hand tightened on Anna's, his jaw working with controlled anger. But before he could speak, Anna surprised herself by finding her voice. "You're right, Rachel," Anna said clearly. "Grief does make us vulnerable. It strips away our defenses and leaves us raw and desperate for anything that makes the pain less consuming. But that vulnerability isn't something to be weaponized or judged. Yes, I've found connection with Ken. Yes, it's complicated and messy and probably happening too fast by conventional standards. But it's also real and honest and based on mutual respect rather than manipulation or desperation." She took a breath, gathering courage. "You're young and you're hurting, and you're looking for someone to make you feel less alone. I understand that completely. But attacking people who found comfort elsewhere isn't processing grief, Rachel. It's lashing out because you're scared you'll never feel whole again. And I promise you, that fear is temporary, even though it feels permanent right now." Tears gathered in Rachel's eyes, her careful composure cracking. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You're older. You had years with your husband. I barely got started with mine. Everyone treats me like a child, like my loss matters less because I'm young. And now, even here, in the one place I thought I belonged, I'm being dismissed again." Dr. Chen intervened gently, redirecting the conversation toward Rachel's legitimate pain rather than her misdirected anger. But the damage had been done, the group's fragile trust fractured by conflict that had been building beneath the surface. After the meeting, Rachel approached Anna alone while Ken was speaking with Dr. Chen. The younger woman's face was blotchy from crying, her earlier hostility replaced with something more honest and painful. "I'm sorry," Rachel said quietly. "You were right. I'm lashing out because I'm terrified. Everyone my age is getting married and starting families, and I'm a widow at 22. The man I married, we'd only been together for 3 years. Sometimes I can barely remember what his voice sounded like, and that makes me feel like I'm losing him all over again." Anna's anger softened despite herself. "I'm sorry you're going through this. 22 is too young for this kind of loss." "But 34 isn't?" Rachel challenged, though without heat. "Loss is loss, like Ken said. I shouldn't have made it a competition." She paused, twisting her wedding ring. "I saw how he looked at you from the first night he came. I thought if I could make myself more appealing, younger, less complicated, maybe he'd choose me instead. But he'd already chosen, hadn't he? Before either of us had a chance." "It wasn't about choosing," Anna said carefully. "It was about recognition. Ken and I understood each other from the first conversation. That's not something you can manufacture or compete for." Rachel nodded slowly, accepting a truth that clearly hurt. "Will you keep coming to group, even now that you have him?" Anna considered the question seriously. "I don't know. Maybe this group served its purpose, gave me what I needed when I needed it. Maybe now it's time to move forward in different ways." "He's lucky," Rachel said finally. "You both are, to have found each other in all this darkness." She walked away before Anna could respond, her shoulders curved inward with the weight of solitude that Anna remembered all too well. Ken drove Anna home that night, both of them quiet as they processed the evening's confrontation. Inside her house, safely away from witnesses and judgment, Ken pulled her close with the kind of desperation that spoke to how rattled he'd been by Rachel's accusations. "I'm sorry you had to defend us," he murmured against her hair. "I should have said something, should have shut her down before she could attack you like that." "I needed to say it," Anna replied. "Needed to speak the truth out loud, to claim this thing between us instead of hiding it like something shameful." Ken pulled back, his hands framing her face. "There's nothing shameful about this, about us. But Anna, I need you to be sure, really sure. Because once we fully commit to this, once we stop treating it like a temporary comfort and acknowledge it as something real, there's no going back. People will judge us. They'll say we moved too fast, that we're using each other, that we're being disrespectful to our spouse's memories." "Let them judge," Anna said fiercely. "I spent 8 months caring what people thought, performing grief in ways that satisfied everyone else's expectations. I'm done with that. I choose you, Ken, messily, imperfectly, too quickly by anyone else's standards. But I choose you." The kiss that followed was different from before, marked by decision rather than desperation. They made love again that night. Slower this time, learning each other's bodies with more attention and less urgency. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in sheets that were becoming theirs rather than Anna's alone, Ken spoke the words that had been building between them since that first meeting. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "I know it's too soon, I know it's too fast, but I need you to know. This isn't just comfort or convenience for me. This is real." Anna's heart stuttered in her chest, the declaration both terrifying and exhilarating. "I think I've been falling since that first night, when you almost touched me and pulled back. I wanted that touch so badly, wanted to be seen as something other than just a widow. You made me feel human again, Ken. Complicated and messy and alive. I want you to meet Mia, Ken said suddenly. Not as the woman I'm dating, not yet. Just as my friend. She needs to see that I have a life beyond being her father, that it's okay to move forward, and I need you to know the most important person in my world. The introduction happened on a Sunday afternoon at the park, where Ken took Mia every weekend. Anna arrived nervous in ways that had nothing to do with grief, and everything to do with the very real possibility that this 7-year-old might determine the future of her relationship. Mia was small for her age, all knobby knees and wild curls, with her father's serious eyes and a smile that could light up the world. She studied Anna with frank curiosity as Ken made introductions, clearly assessing whether this new person measured up to her standards. Daddy says you're his friend from his sad people group, Mia announced without preamble. Are you very sad? Sometimes, Anna admitted, sitting on the bench beside Ken while Mia stood in front of them, arms crossed in unconscious imitation of her father's protective stance. My husband died, and that made me very sad. But your daddy has been helping me feel less sad. Mia considered this seriously. Daddy's been less sad too. He smiles more now. I told him it's okay to smile, even though Mommy's gone. She wouldn't want him to be sad forever. The casual wisdom of children never failed to astound Anna. Your mommy sounds like she was very smart. She was the smartest, Mia agreed. She taught 2nd grade, and she always knew when I was lying about brushing my teeth. Daddy's not as good at knowing when I'm lying. She shot her father a mischievous look that suggested she'd been taking advantage of this particular weakness. Hey, Ken protested mildly. I know plenty about your lying. I just pick my battles. Mia giggled, then turned her attention back to Anna. Do you like dinosaurs? Because if you're going to be Daddy's friend, you have to like dinosaurs. It's very important. I love dinosaurs, Anna said solemnly. Especially the ones with the long necks. Brachiosaurus, Mia corrected immediately. You have to use their real names or they don't respect you. The afternoon passed in a blur of playground equipment and enthusiastic lectures about various prehistoric creatures. Anna found herself genuinely charmed by this small person who carried her grief with such matter-of-fact acceptance, who could speak about her dead mother in one breath and demand someone push her on the swings in the next. As they walked back to the parking lot, Mia slipped her small hand into Anna's with casual trust that made Anna's throat tight. You should come to our house for dinner, Mia announced. Daddy makes really good spaghetti, and we always have ice cream after. It's our tradition. Ken's eyes met Anna's over his daughter's head, the question clear. Is this too much too soon? Anna squeezed Mia's hand gently. I would love to come to dinner. Dinner at Ken's house revealed a life carefully constructed around his daughter's needs. The apartment was small but impeccably maintained, photographs of Claire present but not dominating, evidence of a man who'd learned to honor the past without being imprisoned by it. Mia chattered through the meal about school and friends and the injustice of having to eat vegetables before dessert. After Mia was tucked into bed, her good night including a casual, "Bye, Anna, come back soon." That suggested the 7-year-old had already accepted this new presence in their lives. Ken and Anna sat on his worn couch drinking wine and processing the significance of what had just happened. She likes you, Ken said unnecessarily. More than that, she's comfortable with you. Mia's usually cautious about new people. She's remarkable, Anna replied honestly. The way she talks about Claire so openly and naturally. You've done an incredible job helping her process her grief. I didn't have a choice, Ken said quietly. I could barely function those first few months, but she needed me. So I learned to compartmentalize, to be present for her even when I wanted to fall apart. Some days the only thing that kept me going was knowing she was watching, learning how to survive tragedy by watching me. Anna reached for his hand. "You're an amazing father." "I'm a terrified father who's making it up as I go," Ken corrected. "But thank you." He turned to face her fully. "Anna, I need to know where you see this going. Because Mia's already getting attached, and if this is temporary for you, if you're just testing the waters before deciding you're not ready, I need to know now before she gets hurt." The question was fair, necessary, and terrifying in its implications. Anna took a long breath, searching for honest words. "I can't promise forever. I can't even promise next week with absolute certainty. Because grief is unpredictable, and I'm still learning how to navigate loving someone new while mourning someone gone. But I can promise that this is real for me. That I'm in this with intention, not just looking for temporary comfort." "That's enough," Ken said, pulling her close. "That's all I can ask for, given that I can't promise absolute certainty either. We're both doing this scared and uncertain and hoping we don't destroy each other in the process." They sat together in the dim light of his living room, two broken people attempting to build something whole, and Anna felt the future unfold with terrifying possibility. The months that followed established new rhythms. Anna began spending more time at Ken's apartment, her presence becoming routine for Mia, who accepted her with the adaptability of childhood. They established boundaries and traditions, movie nights where Mia got to choose the film, Sunday park visits, dinners where Anna learned to make the specific shape of dinosaur-themed chicken nuggets that Mia deemed acceptable. Anna's house remained her refuge, the place where she could process her continuing grief in private. She'd taken down some of David's photos, not erasing him, but making space for her present alongside her past. The unfinished rocking chair remained in the garage, a memorial she wasn't ready to part with, but could now view without complete devastation. Ken met her remaining family at Thanksgiving, enduring the suspicious questions from her sister and the calculating assessment from her mother, both clearly wondering if this relationship was healthy or just two grieving people using each other as life rafts. Anna deflected their concerns with firm grace, establishing boundaries that felt necessary for her survival. Christmas approached with the particular dread that first holidays without lost spouses carried. Anna and Ken decided to spend it together, creating new traditions that honored the past while acknowledging their present. Mia's excitement about Santa temporarily overrode any grief about Claire's absence, though Ken found his daughter crying on Christmas Eve, saying she missed Mommy's special hot chocolate. Anna held Mia while Ken composed himself in the kitchen, the three of them learning that grief could coexist with joy, that celebrating while missing someone wasn't betrayal, but survival. They made Claire's hot chocolate recipe together, Mia directing them with serious precision. And when they drank it, Ken raised his mug in a quiet toast to the woman who taught his daughter that love was demonstrated through small, sweet gestures. In January, 14 months after David's death, Anna stood in her bedroom considering the king-sized bed she'd shared with him for 6 years. Ken had never stayed overnight at her house, some unspoken agreement keeping their physical relationship confined to his space rather than the home she'd built with David. But that night, after a particularly difficult therapy session where she'd finally processed some of her anger at David for dying and leaving her alone, Anna called Ken with a request that surprised them both. "Come over tonight," she said, "after Mia's asleep. I need you here, in my space, helping me reclaim it as mine rather than just his shrine." Ken arrived near 10, his expression serious as he stood in her bedroom doorway. "Are you sure? Because once I'm in that bed, everything changes. This stops being David's house and becomes yours, a place where you're building a future." "I know," Anna said. "I'm ready. I need to be ready, or I'll never move forward." What happened that night was both physical and symbolic, Anna claiming her space and her body and her future with deliberate intention. Ken was patient and tender, understanding the significance of every moment, every touch that declared Anna's right to want and be wanted again. Afterward, lying in sheets that now smelled like both of them, Anna felt something release in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered against Ken's shoulder. "For what?" "For being patient with me, for understanding that healing isn't linear, for loving me even though I'm still learning how to love myself again." Ken's arms tightened around her. "You don't have to thank me for that. Loving you isn't work, Anna. It's the easiest thing I've done since Claire died." "I love you," Anna said, the words coming easier now. "I'm in love with you. Present tense, fully committed, terrifyingly real." "I love you too," Ken replied. "And Mia loves you, though she expresses it by demanding you attend all her school events and insisting you know the difference between a stegosaurus and an ankylosaurus." Anna laughed through sudden tears. "I'm learning, the plates versus the club tail. It's an important distinction." They fell asleep tangled together, and when Anna woke at 3 a.m. to find Ken beside her, his breathing steady in the darkness, she didn't panic. Instead, she felt grateful, complicated, and messy and real. Spring brought new growth in more ways than meteorological. Anna returned to her design work tentatively, taking on small freelance projects that reignited creative passions she'd thought extinct. Ken got a promotion at work, his increased salary allowing him to move from their cramped apartment to a small house with a yard where Mia could play. The moving process involved difficult decisions about Claire's belongings, what to keep, what to donate, what to give Mia when she was older. Anna helped sort through boxes with gentle hands, understanding that every item carried weight and memory. "I'm keeping this," Ken said, holding up one of Claire's sweaters. "Mia still sleeps with it sometimes, but the rest, I think it's time to let other people benefit from her things." They donated Claire's clothes to a women's shelter, her teaching supplies to her former school, her books to the library where she'd spent countless hours. It felt like release rather than erasure, honoring her memory by sharing what she'd loved. The new house had 3 bedrooms, space for Mia, space for Ken, and a third room whose purpose remained deliberately undefined. "Guest room," Ken said when Anna asked, "or office, or maybe someday, if you wanted, it could be yours. When you're ready to not maintain 2 separate houses." The suggestion hung between them, loaded with implication. They'd been together nearly 6 months now, long enough that combining households seemed logical, but complicated enough that neither wanted to rush. "I'm not ready to sell my house," Anna said carefully. "But maybe I could stay here more often, keep some things in that third room, test what living together might feel like before fully committing." "That's perfect," Ken agreed, relief evident in his expression. "No pressure, just organic evolution toward whatever feels right." Summer arrived with swimming lessons for Mia and weekend barbecues where Ken's friends gradually met Anna, their acceptance hard-won but eventually genuine. Anna's friends remained more skeptical, worried she was moving too fast, replacing David rather than processing his loss. "I'm not replacing anyone," Anna told her best friend over coffee. "I'm just refusing to stay frozen in grief forever. Yes, it's been less than a year. Yes, some people will judge. But I'm happy, genuinely happy, for the first time since David died. And I won't apologize for that." On the anniversary of David's death, Anna woke in Ken's bed with Mia between them, the 7-year-old having crawled in during the night after a bad dream. Ken was already awake, his eyes finding Anna's with understanding. "What do you need today?" he asked quietly. "I need to visit his grave," Anna said. "Alone. To talk to him, to tell him about you and Mia, and this life I'm building. To ask his forgiveness, and to thank him for teaching me how to love so completely that even his death couldn't make me afraid to try again." Ken nodded. "Take all the time you need. We'll be here when you get back." At the cemetery, Anna sat beside David's headstone and talked for an hour. She told him about Ken's kindness, about Mia's dinosaur obsession, about learning to sleep through the night again without nightmares. She cried and laughed and apologized and thanked him, working through the complicated grief that would never fully resolve, but could coexist with new love. "I hope you'd approve," she whispered finally. "I hope you'd want me to be happy rather than miserable without you. I'm choosing to believe you would, because the alternative is too painful." She left flowers, his favorite yellow roses, and drove back to Ken's house where Mia had made a welcome home sign with carefully drawn dinosaurs. The gesture, so innocent and loving, made Anna's grief and gratitude collide in her chest. That night, after Mia was asleep, Anna and Ken sat on the back porch, watching fireflies emerge in the dusky light. "I'm ready," Anna said suddenly, "to sell my house, to make this my home officially, to stop splitting myself between two worlds and fully commit to the one we're building together." Ken's hand found hers in the darkness. "Are you sure? Because I don't want you to feel pressured or rushed." "I'm sure," Anna replied. "David's house was our dream, but holding on to it is keeping me tethered to a life that doesn't exist anymore. I'm ready to build new dreams, with you and Mia, if you'll have me." "If I'll have you?" Ken's laugh was disbelieving. "Anna, I've been waiting for you to be ready. I love you. Mia loves you. We want you here, fully here, not divided between past and present." 6 months later, on a crisp October afternoon, exactly 2 years after David's death, Anna and Ken stood in their backyard with Mia between them, officially blending their family in a small ceremony attended by friends who'd learned to accept their unconventional timeline. It wasn't a wedding, not yet, both still legally widowed, and not quite ready for that particular symbolism. But it was a commitment ceremony, a public declaration that they'd chosen each other despite and because of their complicated histories. Mia served as their witness, reading a speech she'd written herself about how love doesn't run out when you use it on new people. It just grows bigger. Anna cried through the entire ceremony, tears of grief and joy mixed together until she couldn't distinguish between them. That night, in their bed, in their house, Ken held Anna close and whispered against her hair, "Thank you for being brave enough to try again." "Thank you for making it worth it," Anna replied. They fell asleep, as they often did now, tangled together with Mia's occasional nighttime appearances, making them a family in practice, if not yet in law. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but hopeful, marked by the understanding that grief would always be part of their story, but didn't have to be the ending. 3 years after that first grief support group meeting, Anna stood in their kitchen making breakfast, while Mia did homework at the table, and Ken read the newspaper. The scene was aggressively normal, almost boring in its domesticity, and Anna had never been more grateful for anything in her life. "Mommy Anna," Mia said, using the name she'd gradually adopted over the past year, "can you help me with this math problem? Daddy's terrible at fractions." Anna's heart squeezed at the casual "Mommy Anna," the title that honored both Claire's irreplaceable position and Anna's earned place in this child's life. "Of course, sweetheart." Later, after Mia left for school and Ken departed for work, Anna sat alone in the quiet house and thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the broken widow who could barely function, to the woman who'd chosen to risk loving again, despite knowing intimately what loss felt like, to the mother figure who braided hair and supervised homework, and loved a child who wasn't biologically hers, but felt like hers anyway. She thought about Rachel occasionally, hoping the young widow had found her own path toward healing. She thought about that first support group meeting, about Ken's almost touch that had awakened something in her she'd thought died with David. She thought about how grief and love weren't opposites but companions, how learning to hold both simultaneously was perhaps the most adult thing she'd ever done. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ken. "Lunch today? Want to discuss something important?" Anna's heart jumped with familiar anxiety and excitement. Ken had been dropping hints about making their commitment legal, about giving Mia the security of a legally bound family. Anna had been considering the same thing, weighing her fear of replacing David against her desire to fully claim this new life. She typed back, "Lunch sounds perfect. I love you." The response came immediately. "Love you too. Can't wait to spend the rest of my life showing you how much." Anna smiled, closed her laptop, and looked at the photo on her desk, David smiling from their wedding day beside a newer photo of Ken, Mia, and Anna at the beach last summer. Both pictures representing love, both valid, both part of her story. She was done choosing between them, done feeling guilty for moving forward, done apologizing for surviving. She was simply, finally, ready to live. And as she drove to meet Ken for lunch, where he would ask her to marry him, and she would say yes, Anna felt David's blessing like sunshine on her face. Because love, she'd learned, didn't diminish by being shared. It expanded, growing large enough to hold past and present, grief and joy, memory and possibility. The touch-starved widow had learned to be touched again. The grieving father had learned to smile. The fatherless daughter had learned that family could be built as well as born. And together, they'd learned that sometimes the greatest act of love for the dead was choosing to fully live.